सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। सदाशिवसमारम्भां शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्परां। श्रुतिस्मृतिपुराणानाम् आलयं करुणालयं नमामि भगवत्पाद शङ्करं लोकशङ्करं। शङ्करं शङ्कराचार्यं केशवं बादरायणं सूत्रभाष्यकृतौ वन्दे भगवन्तौ पुनः पुनः। वासुदेवेन्द्रयोगीन्द्रं नत्वा ज्ञानप्रदं गुरुं मुमुक्षूणां हितार्थाय तत्त्वबोधोऽभिधीयते। So yesterday we were seeing a brief introduction about Tattva Bodha. So this text is a Prakarana Grantha, a text written by Bhagavān Adi Shankaracharya. What is the purpose of writing the text? This text gives a summary of the teachings given in the Upanishads. The goal which this text is going to point out is jīva-Brahma aikya, the oneness between the individual and the Supreme. Individual and God, Jiva and Ishvara. This is the purpose. So what are the important teachings given in the Upanishad? The entire thing has been summarized and put it in one text. Moreover, this text gives a systematic teaching. Systematically, there is a thought development, and also this text is an introductory text for all the spiritual seekers because it gives the definitions of different terms and terminologies given in the scriptures. There are so many terms. They are technical terms. They are called as pāribhāshika shabda. Technical terms. So you must be aware of what these technical terms mean. So all those technical terms are put into this text. Right. So in the invocation itself, Bhagavān Adi Shankaracharya makes it clear to whom does this text benefit. So who is the adhikāri here? Mumukshūnām hitārthāya. This text is meant for mumukshu, desirer of liberation. The one who desires moksha, this text is meant for. Now, first of all, we have to have clear understanding of what is moksha, because otherwise this text will be meaningless. Many people have this notion that moksha means going to some world, maybe some Kailasa or Vaikuntha, etc. This is some idea. or some heavenly world which is different from this world. Some have moksha as some kind of psychic powers, gaining some kind of supernatural powers. That also is not moksha. Some people have this notion that it is gaining some mystic experience, some light, some sound, some strange experiences at the seat of meditation. That is also not moksha. Then what is moksha? Moksha means freedom. Freedom from what? Freedom from all kinds of psychological disorders. Freedom from all kinds of psychological mental problems. This is real moksha. What are the psychological disorders which human beings are suffering from? Anger, greed, lust, jealousy, feeling of low esteem, discontentment, hatred. Now you know what it is. Feeling of loneliness, dejection, depression, stress, strain, boredom. All these are nothing but psychological disorders. If we are experiencing these kinds of negative states of mind, understand this text is for us. So who is a mumukshu? The one who is intensely desiring to get rid of all these psychological disorders, and the one who desires to experience peace, happiness, contentment, joy and security. For such people who are intensely desiring these positive things, for them this text is meant for. They are the real mumukshus. Right? So what is it that we have to get rid of? We have to get rid of our own negative states of mind. And this is possible only through right understanding about life. All our disturbances of the mind is because we don't know the truth. When we don't know the truth, mind starts imagining everything negative, and these negative thoughts create negative states of mind. So what is it that we have to do? We have to just correct our thinking process. So therefore, what does Bhagavan say? Mumukshunam hitarthaya Tattvabodha abhidhiyate. Bodha, knowledge. Knowledge about what? Tattva, truth. For the sake of mumukshus, the knowledge about the truth has been expounded. Because only through truth your thinking can be corrected. Only when the thinking is corrected, all the psychological disorders can go away. Right? Right. Now, after the invocation prayer, let us chant the pratijñya statement. Pratijñya means the promise. What is promised in this text? Now, the entire text is a prose. It is not a poetry. So, we will not be chanting it. We will be just chanting it in a musical form. There won't be any musical form. It is only mere chanting, because entire text is written in a prose. And in this entire text, there is a question-answer sequence. The Guru himself raises a question as though it is a question raised by the student, and the Guru himself answers it. So the entire text is in the form of a dialogue between the teacher and the student. So just sādhana-chatushtaya sampanna adhikārinām moksha sādhana bhūtam tattva viveka prakaram vakshyāmaha. Now we shall expound vakshyāmaha. What are we going to see? What are we going to study? What are we going to study? Three things are mentioned. What is it that we are going to study? For what we are going to study? And for whom is this teaching meant for? What? For what? For whom? What is it that we are going to study? Tattva Tattva Viveka Prakaram. Prakaram, methodology, a method. A methodology of what? Tattva Viveka. Viveka here means enquiry. A methodology of enquiry. Enquiry into what? Tattva, on truth. So we are going to take up a methodology to enquire into the nature of the truth. We are going to ultimately analyze the truth, enquire into the truth. Now to enquire into anything, there is a methodology. There is a way of proceeding, isn't it? For everything there is a way. There is a proper way. There is a systematic way. There is a way given in the scriptures. So in the same way we have to analyze things. You cannot analyze truth as the way you want, according to your whims and fancies. No. In every subject there is a methodology. There is a perfect way. That methodology we are going to expound. Tattva Viveka Prakaram. But why should I study this? Because it is Moksha Sadhana Bhutam. It will lead to moksha. It is a means of liberation. Therefore, we must study this. So, what are we studying? The enquiry into the truth. For what are we studying? In order to gain liberation. Because this study will give you liberation. Moksha Sadhana Bhutam means it is a means of liberation. Understand the meaning of moksha. What is moksha? Freedom from all kinds of psychological disorders. Now, for whom is this text meant for? Sādhana-chatushtaya sampanna adhikārinam. There is an adhikāri for this. A qualified student. This teaching will benefit only to this particular qualified student. Now, who is this qualified student? Who is this adhikāri? Sādhana-chatushtaya sampanna adhikāri he must be. He must be sampanna, endowed with. Endowed with what? Sādhana-chatushtayam. Fourfold qualifications. This enquiry, this methodology can be undertaken only by a student who has this fourfold qualification. Now, naturally, what will be the next question? What are these fourfold qualifications, isn't it? So that is the next one. Let us chant. So now Bhagavān Shankaracharya himself is raising that question. A sincere student naturally will have this question, that what are these fourfold qualifications endowed with which a student can successfully undertake this methodology of enquiry into the truth. What are those fourfold qualifications? Naturally, this question must arise. Anticipating this question, Bhagavān Shankaracharya puts this question. Sādhana-chatushtayam kim nitya anitya vastu vivekaha iha amutra artha phala bhoga viragaha shamadi shatka sampattihi mumukshutvam cheti. So what is the next question? Sādhana-chatushtayam kim. So earlier it was said, a student who has this fourfold qualification only will succeed in this enquiry. What are those fourfold qualifications? So therefore there has to be four qualifications. What are they? Nityanitya vastu vivekaha, ihamutrartha phala bhoga viragaha, samadhi shatka sampattihi, and mumukshutvam. Now what should be the next question? What are these? Isn't it? So the first one, literal meaning we will see, Nitya Anitya Vastu Vivekaha. Vivekaha, the ability to discriminate, differentiate between Nitya Vastu and Anitya Vastu. Permanent and the impermanent. The ability to differentiate, distinguish, discriminate between permanent and the impermanent, which is called as Vivekaha. This is one. Second one, Iha amutra artha phala bhoga viragaha. Second one is called viragaha. In short, viraga means dispassion, disinterest, distaste, lack of desire. Lack of desire for what? Bhoga viraga, in pleasures. Disinterest in bhoga, pleasures. What kind of bhoga? Artha phala bhoga. Those pleasures which have come to you because of as a result of the fruits of your action. Some actions you have done in the past, as a fruits of those actions, phala means karma phala. As a fruits of those actions, you have got certain materials, artha means objects, which you can indulge. Now you are not showing any interest in indulgence. Disinterest in the indulgence of pleasures. Iha amutra, here or hereafter. The pleasures available in this world as well as the pleasures available in the other world. Other world means swarga, etc., heavens. So what is this qualification? This person is not interested in any kind of pleasures of this world or other world. To put in short, it is viraga, dispassion. This is the second one. Third one, shamadhi shatka sampattihi. Sampatti, wealth. Wealth, how many wealth? Shatka sampatti, six-fold wealth. Shamadhi, starting from shama, etc. Six-fold wealth starting from shama, etc. This is the third one. And what is the fourth one? Mumukshutvam, desire for liberation. These are the fourfold qualifications. What are they? In short, Vivekaha, Vairagyaha, Shamadhi Shatka Sampatti, Mumukshutva. Now naturally a question will come, what are these? So a little more elaboration is given. Let us take the next one. Here the description is about Viveka. What is Viveka? Nitya Nitya Vastu Vivekaha Kaha Nitya Vastu Ekam Brahma Tat Vyatiriktam Sarvam Anityam Ayameva Nitya Anitya Vastu Vivekaha. So next question is, Kaha, what? What is Nitya Anitya Vastu Vivekaha? O Lord, Bhagavān, you have mentioned this term. Now please elaborate upon it. So now here is an elaboration of what is this Viveka. Viveka means ability to discriminate. Now, each and every one of us, we in our life, we have this discrimination and we are using this discrimination also. For example, suppose you go to a vegetable market. You are selecting vegetable. Now, which kind of vegetable you will select? Fresh ones, isn't it? So, how do you decide which is the fresh and which is the stale one, old one? How will you select? You are using your Viveka Shakti. This is fresh, this is stale. So, what do? You select only the fresh one. So, each and every one of us, we are using this Viveka Shakti. Isn't it? Today is rain. Suddenly the Viveka, you will ask, should I go to the satsang or not? Better go. Let us see what this Tattva Bodha is. So ultimately you came. Again after coming here, again the question comes. So there is a choice. Should I sit on the chair or should I sit on the ground? Right? Every time you are applying this Viveka Shakti and you are deciding. Which job should I apply? Which boy or a girl should I marry? Which house should I choose? Where should I settle? Should I go to the foreign country or not? So many questions are there. And every time, what are you doing? You are applying your Viveka Shakti. Isn't it? So all of us, we have these qualifications. Now remember, when we are saying this sādhana-chatushtaya, these are qualifications. These are qualifications which may be more or less in us, but each of these qualifications can be developed. So this list is given not to say whether you are qualified for the text or not. This list is given in order to develop these qualities, so that the clarity of the truth will be more and more. The greater these abilities, the more clearly you will understand the truth. So the list is given not to say that only these people are admitted for the class, not for that. All these abilities are there in us. But only thing is, we have to develop these qualities. Unless we know what it is, how can we develop? So therefore, the list is given. Right? So this Viveka, what is Viveka? Here Bhagavan says, Nitya Anitya Vastu Viveka has to be done. What is Nitya Anitya Vastu? The whole world you must classify into what is Nitya, what is Anitya. This has to be trained. Our intellect has to be trained to see the Nitya Vastu and the Anitya Vastu, to distinguish between these two. Nitya Vastu means permanent thing, Anitya Vastu means impermanent thing. Now the question is, why is this distinction to be made? Why should we go for this? What is the goal of our life? Happiness. Right? The ultimate goal of everyone is Atyantika Dukkha Nivritti Paramananda Prapti. I hope you can understand these terms. Atyantika Dukkha Nivritti, complete cessation of sorrow, plus Paramananda Prapti, supreme bliss. This is what each and every one of us, we are striving for. Infinite happiness for infinite period of time. Total absence of sorrow, isn't it? Now, can an Anitya Vastu give you permanent happiness? Can an impermanent thing give you permanent happiness? It is impossible. So now this Viveka is essential, because if suppose you attach yourself to an impermanent thing, maybe at that moment it is giving you some pleasure, some happiness, some consolation, but what are you holding on to? You are holding on to nothing but sorrow. You are holding on to nothing but pain. If you hold on to Nitya Vastu, yes, it can give you happiness permanently, because it is Nitya. But if you hold on to an Anitya Vastu and expect permanent happiness, then you are in for trouble. So what is the first thing you have to do? Understand what is Nitya, what is Anitya, so that I can detach myself from the Nitya Vastu and attach myself to the Anitya Vastu. If you hold on to Anitya Vastu, suffering is for sure, pain is for sure. Analyze your own life. Whenever you have suffered, if you analyze it, one thing is for sure, you had held on to an Anitya Vastu and therefore you had suffered. Now this Viveka Shakti is to analyze life. Whenever the whole world is in front of us, every moment we have to interact with the world. How does a sādhana-chatushtaya sampanna adhikāri think? His thinking will be not in terms of gain and loss, not in terms of profit and loss, not in terms of pleasures, not in terms of name, fame, etc. His thinking will be, is it Nitya or Anitya? Then he will try to go near or go away from it. Because one thing is for sure, I want happiness. Anitya Vastu cannot give me happiness. Only Nitya Vastu can give me happiness. So this ability to discriminate has to be cultivated. Now if you see the world, what all things come under Anitya? All these things are not mentioned here. This is just an elaboration. If you find, starting from the body is Nitya or Anitya? Anitya. So technical terms, I hope you are able to understand Nitya and Anitya, etc. They are all in our mother tongue also, it is the same term. This body, Nitya or Anitya? Anitya. So what does it mean? If you hold on to this body, thinking that this is permanent, or even ignoring that it is impermanent, remember, both are important. Disregarding the fact that it is impermanent, not consciously aware that it is impermanent, not accepting the fact that it is impermanent, if you do this, then this body can become a source of pain, a source of suffering for you. What about the worldly relationships? Permanent or impermanent? Now for this you don't have to study scriptures. It is just a basic common sense. But the unfortunate thing about us is we sometimes take things for granted. We take this body as though it is permanent. We take our relationships as though it is permanent. Meaning, we don't pay attention to it. We don't make ourselves consciously aware that the things and beings and situations, everything that which we are handling, they are impermanent. We don't remind ourselves again and again that we are living in an impermanent world with impermanent instruments. Remember, the truth can never give you sorrow. It is only the ignoring the truth that gives you sorrow. Truth can never give you sorrow because there is no sorrow in truth. What gives us sorrow is ignoring the truth which gives us sorrow. Now these are all plain facts that the body has to die someday or the other. Our relationships are impermanent. It's a plain fact. You may ignore it because you don't like the truth. But if you ignore it, then what will happen? In the future, you are in for trouble. So Bhagavan, do you mean to say that we should ignore all relationships and all? That is not the point. We have to live in this world. No doubt we have to live in love, serving others, helping others, etc. We have to take care of our family, our children, etc. Everything has to be done. Whatever duties are there, you have to fulfill it as best as you can. But, that but should be there. What is but? Someday or the other, this relationship is going to end. At the back of the mind, keep this. Why should you keep this? You should keep this because in the future, when something happens, that future happening should not come as a shock. Death of near and dear ones. To the extent you are aware of the fact that these relationships are all impermanent, to the extent you are consciously aware, these shocks in life in the form of tragedies and death will not shake you. Because you are aware. You accept it as an unavoidable process in nature. You accept it gracefully. You accept it cheerfully. Such happenings in the world will not shake you, will not create depression in you, sorrow in you, provided you are in touch with the reality. As long as you are in touch with the reality, there cannot be any sorrow for you. Why are we suffering? We have ignored the truth. That's all. Therefore, we must know the truth. Getting the point? Yes. So as a family member, what is my duty? Is it to give up all the family? No. Fulfill all your responsibilities as best as you can. Live in love, service and sacrifice. But at the back of the mind, what should be there? The knowledge should be there that even this will pass away. Because it is anityam. At the back of the mind, it should always be there. Whenever you are handling people, whenever you are handling a situation, whenever you are handling yourself, keep this in mind, these are all anityam. It is something like when you handle cloth, when you are handling cloth, isn't it true that at the back of the mind you are aware that what this cloth must be exposed to, what it must not be exposed to? You are aware, isn't it? Cloth should be kept away from fire. Otherwise it will get burnt. At the back of the mind it is there. Even when you are handling cloth, even when you are handling salt, let us say, you ensure that the salt doesn't come in contact with water. Even when you are handling gold, you are aware of its value, the market price. You handle it carefully. So you know the property of a thing, and according to the nature of the property, you handle it accordingly, isn't it? In the worldly situations, we do the same thing. What Bhagavan is saying is, understand this one property called Nityatvam and Anityatvam of the objects, things, beings, situations. Let this property be there in your mind. So what is being said here? Nityavastu ekam Brahma tad vyatiriktam sarvam anityam. Except Brahman or God. For the time being, let us define Brahman as God. Later on, Bhagavān himself will give clarification. What is this Brahman? Tad vyatiriktam sarvam anityam. Except God, everything is anityam, impermanent. Right? This is Viveka, ability to distinguish. Now, can we cultivate this ability or not? You can. Whenever a situation comes, what kind of thinking process should get generated in your mind? This is anityam. Someday or the other it will go away. So let me not get too much attached to it. Let me not lean on it. Suppose I give you a cardboard chair. Will you sit on it? You are sitting on this chair because you know it can support you, isn't it? Suppose a cardboard chair is there. Will you sit on it? No. Why? You will not take its support because it will collapse. Isn't it? In the same way, let us make use of the situation, but let us not lean on a person, a thing, a being, a situation, because they are impermanent. Leaning on means what? Saying that this person is the whole and soul of my life. Then you are leaning on that person. Someday you are going to be in trouble. Without this person I cannot live. Without this thing I cannot live. Without this situation I cannot live. When you are saying these things, it means you are leaning on that. When you are leaning, remember, in the future you are going to be in trouble. Why? Tad vyatiriktam sarvam anityam. Then whom should I lean on? You must lean on that which is permanent. Now what is the permanent thing given here? Nityavastu ekam Brahma. Here, what is Brahma is not defined. Later on, Bhagavān himself will take up that topic. So here, for the time being, let us understand it as God. Hold on to God. He will not abandon you. Hold on to the world. You are in for trouble. This is the summary, sum and substance of the entire thing. Right? This is Viveka. Viveka means ability to distinguish between what is permanent and what is impermanent. This is something which we can cultivate, which we must cultivate as a spiritual seeker. Why should we cultivate? We should cultivate because ultimate goal of our life is happiness, peace, freedom from sorrow, etc. Only and only when you hold on to the permanent thing, you can be free from sorrow. If you hold on to the impermanent thing, you will definitely end up being miserable. This is Viveka. Now let us see Viraga. Viragaha kaha iha swarga bhogeshu ichharahityam. Yes, now comes the second one. Out of the fourfold qualifications, the first one is Viveka, second one is Vairagya or Viraga. Both are same. So what is the definition of Viraga? Ichharahityam, absence of desire. Absence of desire. In what? Bhogeshu ichharahityam, absence of desires in the pleasures. What kind of pleasures? Iha swarga. Pleasures with respect to the world, this world, pleasures with respect to the heavens, or whichever world it is. Absence of desires with respect to the pleasures of the world. How to cultivate this Vairagya or Viraga, dispassion? Just go through the pleasures. Scriptures doesn't say abstain from pleasures. Scriptures say go through the pleasures, understand the defects, and then by you yourself develop this understanding that this pleasure is not going to give happiness, it is only misery. As far as the Upanishads are concerned, they say, Parikshalokan karmachitan brahmana nirvedamayat. Let him develop this passion. How? Pariksha lokan. You test. Experiment with the world. Be a scientist. Experiment. Is this object going to give me happiness? Is this pleasure going to give me happiness? You yourself try. Just don't read the book and say, no, the scriptures have said it, so that will not help you. Bookish knowledge is not going to help you. Let it be your own experience. Experiential knowledge is more important than theoretical knowledge. Any amount of study of the scriptures will not help. Go indulge. It is allowed. But let it be legitimate indulgence. Socially accepted indulgence. So that others are not in trouble. But after indulgence, what should be the lesson you learn from that? The lesson is, after indulgence, I have ended up becoming a loser. Then that indulgence becomes wisdom. That experience becomes wisdom. Now, what are the defects? We have seen this earlier also. What are the defects in sense pleasures? Number one, it is bound by time. Every pleasure begins at a period of time, it ends at a period of time. Adyantavantaha. It has got an adi, it has got an anta. This is a defect. Because what kind of happiness am I desiring? I am desiring infinite happiness for infinite period of time. This is a desire which every one of us has. But is this pleasure, the sense pleasure, going to give this? No. It has a beginning, it has an end. So that is a defect. Second, intensity-wise limitation. Any joy, any pleasure, that happiness which it can give, it has a limitation with respect to intensity. That is second defect. Third defect. Every time we indulge, the bodily vitalities are drained away. Body becomes weaker and weaker with every indulgence. This is a third defect. Do you want your body to be strong or weak? Now, if there is a pleasure which takes away all the vitalities of the body and the senses, then better not to indulge, because a healthy body is a prerequisite for doing sadhana or for anything for that matter. Health of the body deteriorates with indulgence. This is the third defect. What is the fourth one? Every time I indulge in pleasures, the mind gets addicted to that pleasure. Any addiction is a slavery. Do you want to be a master of your mind or a slave of your mind? I want to be the master of my mind. I want my mind to obey my orders, my commands. Then only I can succeed in life. But now when I am getting addicted to pleasures, what is happening? I become a slave. My mind becomes my master. Look at the chain smokers and the drug addicts and the drunkards. How helpless they are. Isn't it? This is another defect. How many defects over? 4. Fifth defect. I become a slave of the world. Not only that I become the slave of my mind, I become the slave of the world also. Isn't it? For getting something, I am ready to stoop down to any level. That is slavery unto the world. Again, whenever the pleasures, the desire for the pleasures crowd my mind, my thinking ability is paralyzed, is jammed. Is it a defect? It is also a defect. So this way, if you see, there are lots and lots of defects in indulging in pleasures. So how to develop this kind of vairagyam? How to develop this kind of dispassion? Every time you indulge, every time you go through these pleasures, learn this important lesson, that this cannot give me permanent happiness. Now these are something which has to be developed. If the dispassion is lacking, every time you go through the experience, come back, analyze the situation, how you were, how you are. Did you gain anything or did you lose anything? This way you cultivate dispassion. In fact, dispassion is nothing but desirelessness for the anitya vastu. What is viveka? Discrimination between nitya and anitya, permanent and the impermanent. What is vairagya? Desirelessness for the anitya. So naturally, next one should be there. What is the next one? Desire for the nitya. which is nothing but mumukshutvam. So before getting into Samadhi Shatka Sampatti, let us see the definition of mumukshutvam. So we are skipping Samadhi Shatka Sampatti. We will come back to it. We will first take mumukshutvam and then we will go back to Samadhi Shatka Sampatti. Mumukshutvam kim moksho me bhuyat iti ichha. What is mumukshutvam? What is this desire for liberation? Ichha, it's a desire. Iti ichha, it's a desire. What kind of desire? Moksho me bhuyat. May I attain liberation. May I attain moksha. This intense desire is called mumukshutvam. So what is mumukshutvam? It's a desire. Desire for what? Desire for liberation. Put in another words, it is desire for truth. It is desire for God. Because desire for truth alone can make you free from all kinds of psychological disorders. Desire for liberation, desire for God, desire for truth, all these are one and the same thing. So what is Viveka? Ability to discriminate between permanent and the impermanent. What is Vairagya? Ability or rather desirelessness for the impermanent. What is Mumukshutvam? Desire for the permanent. This is the entire spirituality, sum and substance. First, know what is permanent, impermanent. Second, detach from the impermanent. Third, attach to the permanent. Bas, over. But now, with what instrument you have to do this? Isn't it with the mind? The mind is the one which has to discriminate between permanent and the impermanent. The mind is the one which has to detach from the impermanent. The mind is the instrument with which you have to attach to the permanent. So that mind has to be a special mind. It cannot be an ordinary mind because it is something very difficult. What are the qualifications that mind must have? That is called as Samadhi Shatka Sampatti. There are 6 qualifications which that mind must possess. If that mind has these abilities, then that mind can do these miracles. What are the miracles? Differentiating between permanent and the impermanent, detaching from the impermanent, attaching to the permanent. To do this, mind has to be endowed with qualifications. They are called as Samadhi Shatka Sampatti. It has to be endowed with 6 qualifications. What are the 6 qualifications? Samadhi sadhana sampattihi ka shamodama uparamastitiksha shraddha samadhanam cha iti. Yes, so naturally the next question is, what are these Samadhi Shatka Sampatti? The 6-fold qualifications starting from Samadhi. What are they? So now the list is given. Shamaha, Damaha, Uparamaha, or Uparatihi. In the text, it is Uparatihi. Uparati and Uparama, both are same. Uparatihi, Titiksha, Shraddha, Samadhanam. Shama, Dama, Uparama, Titiksha, Shraddha, Samadhanam. So what should be the next question? What are they? Isn't it? So now let us start from Shama. Shamaha kaha mano nigraha. Yes, short. What is Shama? These are the abilities of the mind, qualities of the mind. That mind which is fit to detach and attach. So these are the qualities. Again, we must try to develop. Shama. What is Shama? Mano nigraha. Nigraha means restraint, tame, control, check, quieten. Mano nigraha shamaha. The ability to quieten the mind, control the mind, tame the mind. This is Shama. Why Shama is important? Unless the mind is quiet and tamed, you will not be able to discriminate between what is permanent and impermanent. You will not be able to detach from the impermanent and attach to the permanent. For all this, mind should be available. Only a quiet mind will be available. Once the mind is disturbed, that mind will not be available for doing viveka, vairagya, etc. So therefore, first and foremost qualification of the mind is, it must be quiet, it must be peaceful, it must be under your control. It must be disciplined, tamed. How to develop, it is not mentioned, but we can discuss. How to keep a quiet mind, how to maintain the quietude of the mind, how to prevent the mind from getting disturbed. Now see, every moment we are asked to face situations in life. Different kinds of situations we are exposed to, and every situation mind has to respond, isn't it? Now, there are two choices. Either you can respond to a situation negatively, you can negatively react to a situation, or you can positively respond to a situation. Any situation in this world, choice is given to you. Any situation can have a positive response or a negative reaction. Normally, how do we deal with the situation? We negatively react. Negative reaction means thoughtless reaction, instinctive reaction, reaction based on our past vasanas, samskaras, etc. Unconscious reaction, where you are not consciously involved. So then what happens? That situation creates a set of negative thought patterns in your mind, and these negative thought patterns disturbs the mind. Because the law is, as your thoughts, so will be the state of your mind. This is a law. If your thoughts are positive, your mind will be quiet. If your thoughts are negative, your mind will be disturbed. Simple. It's a simple law. So how to maintain the quietude of my mind? How to prevent my mind from getting disturbed? Simple. Every situation, learn to react positively. If there is a situation which is really bothering you, which brings out negative emotions from you, take that situation, analyze it. Early morning, sit in your prayer, bring that situation and try to think your best. How best can I respond to this situation? Suppose there is a particular person whom you hate. Bring that person. Find out in what ways you can love that person. And definitely there are umpteen number of ways in which you can do that. In this way, take every situation, especially the situations which are bothering you, which are disturbing you, which are bringing in negative emotions. Take that situation, analyze the situation, find out what is the best means of handling the situation, consciously handle the situation a few number of times, and suddenly it becomes your nature. Effortlessly, you start responding positively to that situation. Then understand that situation has taught the right lesson, you move forward. Again, that situation will not bother you. But suppose you don't learn lesson from the situation, in some way or the other, this situation will keep coming to you. This is life. As long as you don't learn lesson from life, that particular situation will keep coming to you. And once you have learned lesson, then that situation will not bother you. Right? So Shama, how to develop Shama? Learn to react positively in every situation. Is there a situation where I cannot react positively? It's impossible. There are no such situation. It is impossible. Every situation can be handled intelligently, wisely. It is possible. Shama. It is our biggest responsibility to see that my mind is at peace. Because only a peaceful mind can practice spirituality. Only a peaceful mind can practice Viveka, Vairagya, etc. This is called Shama. Disturbances can come either from within, or disturbances can be triggered from the external source. In whatever the way is, you must learn to respond positively. Then you will find the mind is at peace all through the day, thus making the mind available for all spiritual practices. This is one. Next one. Damaha kaha chakshuradi bahyendriya nigraha. Right. Now comes Dama. So what is Dama? Again it is Nigraha. Controlling, restraining. taming what? Chakshuradi bahya indriya. Taming the external sense organs like eyes, etc. Chakshuhu adi. Now, what are those external sense organs? Bhagavan himself will take up later. So, we are not going into detail there. Taming the external sense organs is Dhamma. Now, remember, if you are an expert in Shama, Dhamma becomes automatic. Controlling the sense organs is very easy if you have mastered the mind. Isn't it? But there are very many situations where our mind is disturbed and all our efforts to quieten the mind is not working. At that time, we have to practice Dhamma. Meaning what? Let not the inner disturbance express through the outer sense organs. I am disturbed. There is all the possibility that I may shout at the person who has disturbed me, or I may beat him properly. There is a possibility. Preventing that ability of the mind to put a check. One part of the mind, though the entire mind is disturbed, one part of the mind tells, no, let me not speak the wrong words now. Let me not use wrong gestures, because this is not the appropriate time. Again, it's the same mind which is telling it. The eyes, ears, hands, legs, etc., they don't have their own understanding. They act according to the impulses of the mind, the commands of the mind. Now it is the very same mind which says, don't act. Right? This ability of the mind not to allow the inner disturbance to express outside is called Dhamma. Control over the sense organs, in short. Especially in front of our elders, in front of our teachers. Sometimes they have done something which has really created resentment, anger, etc. But at that time, we have to remain quiet. In front of elders, I am not supposed to answer back, argue back, shout back, etc. That wisdom, it is called as a shishtachar. How I must behave in front of wise and noble people. Somewhere from within it says, no, don't do like this. That ability to check the external sense organs, even though the mind is disturbed, is called Dhamma. This is one meaning. Another meaning is not allowing the sense organ to get exposed to situations which will pollute the mind. This is also Dhamma. I know such and such place if I go, my mind will be disturbed. Such and such programs if I watch, my mind will be disturbed. Such and such books if I read, my mind will be disturbed. The ability to say no to it is called Dhamma. Prevention is better than cure, that way. This is called as Dhamma. So what is the main purpose of Dhamma? To keep the mind quiet. Again, that is the main goal. Fine. Next one. What is the third one? Shama, Dhamma. Third one is Uparama or Uparati. Uparamaha kaha swadharmanushtanameva. Yes, what is this Uparama? Now the literal meaning of Uparama is Upa, to withdraw. Rama means revel. Withdrawing from reveling. This is called Uparama or Uparati. Cease to revel. That is the literal meaning. Not reveling. But then here the definition is very interesting. What is the definition given? Swadharma anushtanam eva. Performing your duties alone is Uparama. Swadharma anushtanam. Now that is also true, because when you perform your swadharma, your duties, with total dedication, Uparama becomes natural. Yes or no? Withdrawal becomes natural. If you want to perform your duties as best as you can, if you want to do it, then you will have to withdraw from all unnecessary pursuits, and then you have to focus your mind upon your duty. Then alone duties can be performed well. So in that sense, Uparama is right. Swadharma anushtanam. Different places, different definitions are given. So here it is Swadharma anushtanam. Performance of your duties as best as you can. So what does actually it mean? See, You have a particular duty, and when you are spending time unnecessarily in vain pursuit, in something else which is not, taking you towards the goal, a sense of restlessness or a conscience prick is what is meant here. You must feel, what am I doing? I am wasting my time. There are so many things to do, so many important things to do, and what am I doing? That sense of feeling is actually this uparama. There is a guilt feeling when you are wasting time in nonsense. Now this is a great quality. It's a virtue. Whenever I am doing things which are less important, it may not be bad, but it is unimportant. It is a waste. It is nowhere taking you towards the goal. It may not be bad. It may not be negative also, but it is not taking you towards the goal. When such activities, when you are involved in, that sense of restlessness, a sense of disturbance which you feel, which will tell from within, enough, stop it, you are wasting time, focus yourself upon the task at hand. This ability of the mind to guide from within is called as uparama or uparati. At the sadhaka level, what is a swadharma? Well, actions are 5. Nitya karma, naimittika karma, kamya karma, nishiddha karma, prayaschita karma. Actions, they are totally 5 in number. Nitya karma means daily duties. Every one of us, we have daily duty. Like for example, taking bath, etc. is a nitya karma. Naimittika karma means occasional duties. A particular occasion, you have to do certain things. Some duties, some responsibilities come to you. For example, some marriage function is happening. So that's an occasion. On that occasion, you have certain duties. So that is called as naimittika karma. Third one is called kamya karma. What is kamya karma? These are the actions performed in order to fulfill your selfish desires. By these actions, others are not benefited. They are not harmed. But they are not benefited also. You are doing it only for your selfish interests. Such actions are called kamya karma. The fourth one is called nishiddha karma. Nishiddha karma means through those actions you are benefited but others are harmed. They are called as prohibited actions. Prohibited actions. Nishiddha karma. And the final one is called prayaschita karma. Expiatory actions. You have done something wrong. So in order to neutralize the effect of that papa, you do something else. These are called prayaschita karma. So out of these 5 karmas, what are the actions which we must do? Nitya and naimittika we must do, because they are our duty. They are swadharma. Kamya karma, as much as possible, it should be minimized. If possible, make it 0. Nishiddha karma, absolutely 0. As far as prayaschita karma is concerned, don't give a chance for performing prayaschita karma. What is the necessary precondition for prayaschita karma? You must do a sin, isn't it? For sinful actions only, prayaschita karma becomes relevant. So, out of these 5, these 2 become swadharma. Nitya karma and naimittika karma. So, as a seeker, let me focus on nitya and naimittika karma. Now, this is an ability, because for doing this, you have to withdraw yourself from all kinds of unnecessary pursuits which will only waste your time. You have to withdraw from them and you have to focus your attention upon the task at hand, the responsibilities, the duties. Now, how is this going to help you in Viveka Vairagya? Now here you see, there is a detaching, there is an attaching, isn't it? It is the same thing which you are supposed to do finally. Detach from the anitya vastu, that is Vairagya, attached to the nitya vastu, that is Vivek. From the highest standpoint, swadharma anusthana means abiding in the self. Fixing your attention totally upon the nitya vastu. This is your swadharma. Because your own true nature is Satchidananda Swarupa. Withdrawing the attention of the mind and fixing it upon the self is the greatest swadharma. This we will come to it later. So this is what? Uparama. Uparamaha swadharmanushtanam eva. What is the next one? Titiksha. Titiksha we will take up tomorrow. Om sarve bhavantu sukhinah, sarve santu niramayah, sarve bhadrani pashyantu, ma kaschid dukkha bhag bhavet, asato ma sadgamaya, tamaso ma jyotirgamaya, mrityorma amritam gamaya. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om.